Well, we've got three things that we've observed in talking to now, close to 100 people about the changes that have been going on during some pretty hard times in the meetings business.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is what I call the rise of the master of ceremonies. I've spent a lot of my career working as an MC, and interestingly, it was always an afterthought. Organizations that had never used a master of ceremonies were like, we could save a lot of money by just having Becky from accounting host the show and introduce the speaker.
You pick on Becky from accounting all of the time.
Or they would say, hey, our board chair always serves as the master of ceremonies. It's an honor that they get. And it turns out the board chairs don't actually want to be the master of ceremonies. So when we pivoted to all virtual and it was all new, all of a sudden meeting planners started including a master of ceremonies to help keep the flow going for virtual events. And as we're moving back to in-person events, the MC is coming with it. There are more opportunities for masters of ceremonies. More conferences are looking to have an MC, and more people have become masters of ceremonies than anything I've seen in 15 years as a speaker.
Well, it's now recognized as a unique set of skills, right? It is why poor Becky from accounting is not the right choice. Becky from accounting is great at accounting.
Right.
The skills that it takes to be a great MC are different. Can you just give us a little bit about what kind of skills does a great MC really need in order to be effective?
Well, number one, they've got to be an observer, because a great MC does more than introduce speakers and tell everybody when to be back from the bathroom break. A great MC is listening to what's being said on stage by every single speaker, both on the main stage, in the breakouts, what's being said at the cocktail party, and they're weaving that back into their content that they bring to the stage. So the first thing is they have to be a great observer. The second thing is they've got to be able to think on their feet, because one of the problems is a live event, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person or hybrid,
right,
things are going to go wrong. So a great MC has to have a lot of experience. And the problem with somebody from accounting or the board chair, that's the only time they've ever been an MC. And I think the master of ceremonies, when done correctly, has more impact on your event than your keynote speakers. And therefore, you don't want to just have somebody who's winging it in such an important role.
I couldn't agree with you more. And we've seen how important over the last, we're getting closer to 2 years, how important it is in the virtual environment. And I think you're right that as we go forward and we get to do more in-person and hybrid again, the Master of Ceremonies is a very important role for your event if you want to make sure that people are actually engaged with the content and with each other.
And what meeting planners are telling me is that what they're discovering by now, maybe for some of them the first time working with a seasoned, experienced Master of Ceremonies, is it takes a lot of pressure off of them, and it's an extra set of eyes and ears who can pick up on what's going wrong and solve some of those problems, so that the audience never knows that a speaker was late, or if it's virtual that they couldn't log on for an extra 10 minutes. You and I emceed an event where there was supposed to be some yoga and the person wasn't able to log on. And so you and I just talked as the co-MCs with actual content that was important to the audience. And we filled the whole time. And, you know, when we finally were able to get the yoga person on, nobody ever had any idea that there'd been a 10-minute delay, because the MCs stepped in and filled that gap.
Yeah, really an MC is the best thing you can have in your back pocket at an event, and even during the planning of the event, because if you have an MC who is skilled and well connected, when you say, oh, we need, a purple person who can speak on whatever, they probably know the purple person who knows how to speak on that topic.
That's right.
Use your MC connections. Use us as your connections. We're always happy to help along the way. All right. So number one, rise of the MC. Number two, the short-term booking of all the vendors, right? I certainly have seen, we used to book out maybe 6, 9, luxury of 12 months in advance. I'm seeing 6 weeks for an in-person event, and sometimes less than a week for a virtual event, which may add to my stress level a wee bit. That's a tight time frame. I can't imagine it is a comfortable thing to be putting an event together in that time frame. And now with the variants and everything, things are shifting again. What are you seeing, Thom?
Well, I'm seeing the exact same thing, that meeting planners need to hedge their bets. Some of the hotels and other vendors aren't being easy to work with when it comes to sort of cancellation things. So they're waiting as long as they can to sign a contract. And therefore, if they're waiting to sign their hotel contract, that's going to take them longer to get their AV contract. It's going to take them longer to do everything. And then they're booking their speakers. I've actually seen twice since the fall in-person events where they were looking for a speaker inside of a month. Like, I think both times for me, it was 3 weeks out. And, that puts some stress on the meeting planner, because you don't just want to fill a speaker spot or any vendor with somebody who is breathing air. You want to make sure that you're getting the right person who can come and really wow your audience. And if you're waiting until 3 weeks out, number one, it's going to limit some of your options, because some of the people you want may already be booked for other things. The other thing is you're in a little bit of a panic situation. So I'm seeing there's a lot of short-term bookings going on, and there's a lot of not sure when they're going to be able to sign the contracts. Hey, can you hold this date? And they're waiting longer and longer to sign the contracts, even when they're booking it 6 months out. They're like, well, we can't commit to you until 4 months out or whatever.
Well, and I think, Thom, this is an opportunity for us to give a little bit of ease. Obviously, we would always like to have that contract signed early and just be planning and that sort of thing. But work with your speakers. Unlike other vendors, we can be pretty flexible when it comes to, can you hold that date? Could you hold 2 dates? I'm okay. Yes, absolutely. As long as we keep in communication, I will hold dates for you. If somebody calls for that date, I'm going to give you a call and let you know. Look, keep the lines of communication open. You don't have to feel like you can't do anything until the hotel contract is signed. Put your feelers out. Talk to people. Let's be partners in this, because man, oh man, Thom, I know you know, because we've had event professionals as part of the research that I did for my book on stress. Event professionals, one of the most stressful jobs in the entire universe. And
it just got worse. Absolutely. I think it's gotten a lot more stressful, which leads us to the third thing we've observed as far as changes in the meeting industry, and that is the rise of stress for the meeting planner. I think for those of you who've been working in the meetings business the last 2 years, you think you knew what stress was before, but everybody agrees the last 2 years have just been crazy because of having to cancel, not knowing what to do, wanting to keep people safe, having to work with vendors who, even though you have a contract, the vendor won't come. I know some speakers who are now backing out of events with just a few weeks notice because the event is moving forward. It's in Florida and it's moving forward. And the speaker is like, I'm not traveling because of this current variant. Well, that just adds a whole other layer. Do you bring them in virtually? Do you go and replace them? Another short-term booking for somebody else? There's just so many pieces of stress. So this is your area of expertise. Companies like NASA and other large organizations bring you in to help work on this whole idea of stress. So what do you think? Why is stress so much higher now?
It's the unpredictability. Our brains like a predictable environment. And when we sense that things are unpredictable, that triggers stress. And unlike, my example is always the car coming down the ramp on the highway, and they cut you off and there's a semi behind you or beside you. That triggers stress. But when you're able to get out of that situation, the semi clears and you're able to get in the left lane, all of that cortisol that comes into your body when you get stressed goes out. That's how it's supposed to work. But when you're working in a highly unpredictable environment, like we all have been, that stress never gets to go away. So you actively have to take some steps to tell your body, okay, let's get rid of the cortisol so we can feel better and think better and work better. And honestly, there are lots of little tricks. Here's my favorite one. Change your breath. Change your breath, because anytime you make your breath longer and deeper, it helps. Laughter, singing, all of those things that just allow us to change your breath. Here's my little gift to you today. Google pancakey wife, waffly wife works just as well. My favorite funny video always makes me laugh. The bride in that video has a hysterical, contagious laugh. Change your breath. Let that cortisol come out. Get back to work.
So, it's interesting because we've observed so many changes in the meetings industry, and those were 3 we just wanted to share. But here's the thing I tell everybody is that we have learned over the last 2 years that content, the learning, can now be successfully delivered over a lot of different virtual platforms.
Right.
And so, virtual is here to stay. Hybrid is here to stay. However, that human connection, that sort of serendipity of hallway conversations, that can't be replaced very easily in a virtual environment. So there is still a place for the in-person live events. And my prediction is, over the course of the next couple of years, we're going to see an explosion of the amount of in-person events. I think they're going to be back in full strength. However, we have to remember that people come for that learning opportunities, but they also come for the networking opportunities.
Absolutely.
And therefore, now that we know we can do this virtually, now we have to make sure that our human experiences at events are bigger than they've ever been before. We cannot leave the human side of in-person meetings. We can't leave it to chance anymore.
Absolutely. And this is your area of expertise. And I know that we have both noticed that people are a little out of practice with the human connection part. So give our friends here a little gift. What's one thing event professionals should be thinking about when they're bringing people back together? Maybe it's after 2 years of not being together. What's something that they could do to make us who are out of practice make that better?
Well, I think that event professionals have to remember that you have introverts, you have extroverts, you have people who are comfortable in a networking situation, you have people who are uncomfortable in that type of situation. So what you need to do is prime the pump a little bit. Remind your audience before and during the conference that it is those serendipitous hallway conversations, that the power of the ROI from being at the event comes from the people that you meet. And you can't just assume that people are going to naturally do that. And you can't assume that an open bar equals networking. So when you're designing the event, build in white space for humans to have those hallway conversations. Don't run everybody from one breakout to the next in 15 minutes. Give people longer periods of time, and then give them little tips on how to engage during these longer breaks so that they don't just go to their room and check Facebook or send emails.